Comments to Access TV at telus.net. We are not shocked.
Welcome to Community Access Television. My name is Gunargie O'Sullivan, and we are here to shamelessly promote our community and friends.
My name is Sid Tan, and we have a heck of a show for you today. We have 4 in-studio guests, and we have some video segments from Lucas Meijer on the Downtown Eastside. Tell us who some of our guests are today, Gunargie.
Okay, well, today we have Jean Swanson, who is the coordinator of Carnegie Community Action Project. Plus, we also have Terry Hunter, who is the executive director of Vancouver Moving Theatre and also the executive producer of the Heart of the City Festival.
And we also have Grace Eiko Thomson, a longtime social justice human rights activist who will be here to talk about Vancouver's Year of Conciliation. And also, we'll have on Stuart Parker to chat about electoral reform and proportional representation. But before we start, here we go with a piece by Lucas Meijer.
My name is Lucas Meijer. I'm a film student who is studying gentrification in Vancouver's Downtown Eastside. What I want to know is how many poor people are going to be displaced by rising rents, and what are the consequences going to be. This video contains highlights of a very interesting interview that I had with Geoffrey Howes, spokesperson for the York Rooms Hotel. The York has been a home for poor people for many years because of its low rent. But Pivot Legal Society and many downtown Eastside activists claim that the rents are rising way beyond what poor people can afford, and that welfare recipients in particular are being harassed, intimidated, and evicted from the building. Geoffrey Howes denies this. He claims that a drug problem was really responsible for people being driven out of the building.
The drug dealing has become sort of quite rampant. We had already sort of had to replace, or we lost 2 caretakers as a result of this. And what it does is it sort of, other than being illegal, it just creates so much upheaval within the building that the people who are trying to actually stay clear of drugs, they may be drug addicts themselves, but they're trying to change their lifestyle. They can't get any peace.
In part 2 of the video, Mr. Howes described the rental rates at the York Hotel.
So the pre-existing rooms are being rented up to $475. So once we've renovated the rooms, we'll rent them in the $500 to $575 kind of range, depending on I think we do have a couple. There's 2 that are $600 because they are the bigger rooms on the back side. But in general, between $5 and $575. Depending on whether they're furnished or not, because we find that some people want furnished and some people don't. So it might be $525 if it's not, and an extra $50 if it's furnished.
So it appears that rooms are being renovated and rented out between $500 and $600 a month, well beyond what a welfare person can afford. And near the end of part 3 of the interview, Mr. Howes made this surprising comment.
Rate, and most of our buildings are now aimed at the working poor or people on low income, because I have to tell you, from a business standpoint, renting to welfare individuals is truly a lose-lose, because not only do the rooms get destroyed, but there is no revenue to do any kind of repairs and maintenance, and that's not a business model that we're interested in.
So he probably doesn't want to rent to welfare people anyway. And part 3 of the interview had some other big surprises too. How do you make money?
The question around our business model is that we actually use the ground floor of most of our SROs for a retail tenant. And when we buy a building like this one, and we put a retail tenant on the main floor, in this case it's the restaurant down below, as you know, that is one of the primary revenue sources for the building. So if you look at the number of rooms and the size of the building and the relative cost of the building, there is an economic model that works. But for us, it works primarily because we actually invest in the building and in putting retail in the ground floor, because there's quite significant additional income that comes from the ground floor tenant that helps to pay some of the additional costs associated with virtually all of our properties. We own the Lotus Hotel, the American Hotel, this building across the street, 90 Alexander, where they're doing the filming, that's our building. So the retail tenant supports the tenants above.
There have been regular protests at the restaurant in front of the York. Protesters claim that high-end restaurants and businesses increase gentrification. Could they have a point? I got another surprise when I suggested that the protesters were concerned about certain populations, i.e. welfare people, being forced out.
No, it's a total fact.
Yeah.
But the reality is that that's the responsibility of governments to deal with that. It's a social problem, right? The government determines that people on welfare need to live in this particular area, the Downtown Eastside. We believe it just creates a ghetto. So I'm diametrically opposed to that, and it's now being referred to as a ghetto, and it looks more like a ghetto every day. Governments have a responsibility either to build housing or support individuals if they need support, or to put welfare rates up.
So did I hear right, Geoffrey Howes, a businessman, saying that it's government's responsibility to step in and do something? I must say that I agree. And I really appreciate that Geoffrey Howes' openness and candor in giving this interview. However, I'm more concerned than ever that large numbers, perhaps even thousands of people on welfare and disability could be displaced by rising rents. We need to find out how bad the situation is and what governments are doing to fix it. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Access Community Television, shamelessly promoting our friends and community. My name is Imtiaz Popat. Joining me is Stuart Parker, former leader of the BC Green Party, and he's also currently an instructor in geography at UBC. We serve on the board of Fairvote Canada Vancouver chapter together, and we're here to talk about electoral reform. So Stuart, why do we need to change the electoral system?
Well, the current system that we have, known as first past the post, is the very best voting system that the brightest minds in England in 1215 could possibly have devised. But as this voting system comes up on its 800th anniversary for the next federal election, the reality is that the problems it was designed to solve and the situations it was designed to address have changed. We do not live in a rural feudal society on a small island in the Atlantic Ocean. We live in a modern cosmopolitan society where there are all kinds of forms of community that stretch far beyond the little hamlets and villages that First Past the Post was designed to represent. Once upon a time, your community were your immediate neighbors. But today, we create all kinds of communities, ideological communities, ethnic communities, linguistic communities, etc. Right. And we need a system that recognizes those communities and represents them fairly. And that's why we favor a system of proportional representation. There are hundreds of varieties of proportional representation because each one is designed for a specific country at a specific time, but what they all have in common is that every vote counts equally, and as a result, for every percent of the popular vote a party receives, that determines the percentage of the seats they receive in a legislature or parliament. And so that's the agenda, to update, to modernize our voting system so that it recognizes all communities and all people and treats them equally and fairly.
Now, we actually had two opportunities to vote in referendums here in British Columbia to change the electoral system, and both failed. Why did that happen? Can you explain?
Well, the first time there was a referendum, 58% of British Columbians voted to change the system, and 42% voted against changing the system. So naturally, the government that was elected under First Past the Post with a mere 46% of the vote looked at that result and said, you know what, 58% is not good enough. These people need to get 60% of the vote spread across the province. Also, they were very concerned that the people who favored changing the voting system, we actually spent more money than our opponents. And the reason we did was because These were grassroots citizens campaigns. They were funded by $5 and $10 donations.
Right.
And so we had volunteers on the doorstep who weren't being paid any money, and neither side could afford TV or radio ads. So in 2009, when they ran the referendum again, they made sure that instead of the citizens funding the yes side and the no side, the government funded both sides. And so a small group of lobbyists and PR flacks for the two major political parties were given $1 million to craft a no campaign. And it's at this point that I have to be clear. We knew what kind of people we were up against, we knew what kind of campaign we were up against, and we chose to run a positive, honest campaign, even though we knew that that might cause us to lose. And I have to say, I wish we had gone negative. I fought for that in 2009, but the majority felt that we had to change the tone of politics. And so many of the falsehoods and many of the attacks we didn't respond to. And so one of the things I want to make very clear is that as Democrats, we don't think that British Columbians made a mistake in 2009.
Right.
We made a mistake in not fighting hard for them and not doing everything we could to win that referendum.
Right.
And so we lost an opportunity. But the great thing is that the people who fought against that referendum, one of the other things they did to try and make us lose was they forced us to advocate just one kind of proportional representation rather than the principle of proportional representation.
right.
And that means that many people on the no side dishonestly claimed, people like Carol James and Bill Thielman dishonestly claimed that if people voted no to one kind of proportional representation, they wouldn't keep first past the post, they would get an even better kind of PR. And I think as we go forward, we have to hold the people and parties that promised that to the promises they made in 2009, that they were not going to give us the status quo, they were going to give us electoral fairness.
Okay, now I understand there's some push to bring electoral reform to the municipal level. It's another opportunity to make that change. Can you tell us what's happening there?
Well, what's happening right now is that Vision Vancouver is making the same claim it usually makes, which is, gosh, we'd love to help you out. We'd love to create a fair voting system, but the provincial government won't let us. And there's some truth to that. The provincial government has very narrow and restrictive legislation about what kind of voting system Vancouver can have. And that's why, after advocating single transferable vote, the kind of voting we advocated in those two referenda, the movement has moved to advocating something called cumulative vote, because that's a system that Vision Vancouver or any other city council could implement tomorrow if it wanted. And just to give people a sense of what that looks like, you still get your 10 votes for city councilors, but you don't have to give them out one by one. You can give 5 candidates 2 votes each. You can give one candidate all 10 votes. And this is the kind of proportional representation that the courts have been forcing American cities to implement, because one of the real problems with the kind of voting system we have here is that it's racist. It consistently underrepresents certain minorities, particularly here, South Asian people, but in the United States, where they use this kind of voting, it consistently underrepresents African Americans. And so the NAACP has gone to court in city after city and has won cumulative voting. And so we're really pushing hard to make sure that we have cumulative vote in place for the next civic election in BC in 14 months.
Right, okay. So where can people find more information about fair voting and electoral reform?
Well, Fair Vote Canada is a great organization. It's the biggest and really one of only 2 national organizations for voting reform, fairvote.ca. And there you can find not just Fair Vote and information about voting systems, but Fair Vote's allies like Fair Voting BC, the Movement for Voter Equality, Unlock Democracy, and all kinds of other groups that are also working in different places to bring about a fairer voting system.
Thank you, Stuart, for talking to us about this very important issue. I've been talking to Stuart Parker about changing the electoral system, and you're watching Access Community Television, shamelessly supporting our friends and community.
Comments to Access TV at telus.net. We are not shocked.
Welcome to Access TV as we shamelessly promote our community and our friends. We have Terry Hunter in the house with us today, and he is the executive director of Vancouver Moving Theatre. Plus, he is also the producer of the Heart of the City Festival.
That's it.
Yes. Tell us more about the Heart of the City Festival.
The Heart of the City Festival was founded in 2004. And it was the first festival was produced by Vancouver Moving Theatre in partnership with the Carnegie Community Centre, which, as many people will know, is the primary community centre in the Downtown Eastside, right in the heart of the city at Main and Hastings. And it followed on the success of a very major theatrical production that Vancouver Moving Theatre produced in partnership with the Carnegie. And this theatrical production was called From the Heart of a City, the Downtown Eastside Community Play. And so a community play is a very particular model of community engaged theater where a group of artists and organizations in a community come together to work with the residents of the community to put a play on about the community. So we worked with 80 residents from the Downtown Eastside, most of whom had never performed before in their life. And we created a 2-hour, 3-hour theatrical production with them about the history and the stories of our community. And the production was a huge success. Standing ovations, full houses every night. We ran it for 2 weeks.
And could I ask you, how did the work actually affect those 80 people from the community?
Really powerful. People had such a powerful experience. People, you know, there was Native folks, people from Chinatown, people from Main and Hastings, middle-class people from Strathcona, all coming together to have this shared experience together and to celebrate our community. And it was a very, very powerful experience. People really enjoyed what they did and commented that they wanted to do more. And now that we've done the community play, what can we do in the future? So part of the answer was the Heart of the City Festival. The community play is a one-off. You do it once and you hardly ever do one again because they're so huge and they're so demanding and they're so exhausting to pull off. But we decided to do an annual festival, and that's how the festival, the Heart of the City Festival, came into being. The following year, we produced the first annual Heart of the City Festival. We knew that we wanted to keep on doing it. And I think the program guide was 16 pages, and we had 25 events, and we featured maybe 100 local residents. And last year's festival, we had 118 events, and the program guide was 48 pages long, and we featured over 1,000 artists and residents of the Downtown Eastside. So there's been a huge growth in the last 10 years.
And so how many people are engaging in this year's
Don't know the exact
festival?
numbers yet, but if it's if it's the same as last year we had, I think we performed, or the number of people that performed or presented at the festival was over 1,000 people. And we had 118 events at over 45 locations throughout the Downtown Eastside in a 12-day period. This year's festival will be about the same, plus we have a special additional weekend where we're doing Vancouver Moving Theatre is producing a special show at the festival called Bread and Salt that's going to pay tribute to the Ukrainian Canadians from our community and the contribution that they've made to our history. Yeah, so,
interesting.
yeah, lots
How
and
many
lots and lots
venues
of,
will you be having this year?
Probably about 40 or 45.
40
yeah,
or
everywhere
45.
from community centers to the Carnegie Community Center to co-op radio to schools to coffee shops to libraries to outside on the street. Portland Hotel Society, you know, there's the community garden down on Hastings Street. We're doing events there. We found a ballroom in our community that's in a fruit and vegetable warehouse that we never knew existed. And it's got a sprung floor, and it's one of the, I've been told it's the best ballroom in the city of Vancouver. And it's in our community, and we're doing a big taiko concert there to celebrate the taiko history of our community. So if you can imagine it, we've probably done an event there at that kind of a location. Yeah.
And this year you're also featuring Women in Fish.
Yes.
Where will we be able to see that?
Women in Fish, that's an Urban Inc. production, and Rosemary Georgeson is the lead artist on the project. And her family is being rooted in this community for hundreds of years, and she's come from a fishing background. And so she's put together a show about the role of women, especially Native women in the fishing industry, and the decline of the fishing industry over the last 20 or 30 years. And then from that, the dislocation of the Native people from land and water resources and things like that.
It's all related. Beautiful.
It's all related, yeah. So we're doing that at the Carnegie Community Center. She's doing 2 shows. Good. And it includes a panel discussion with people from the fishing industry. She's also doing a history walk through the neighborhood about the fishing industry, and she's doing an art installation at the Gulf and Fraser, what formerly was called the Gulf and Fraser Fishermen's Credit Union, and they're bringing together old artifacts and photographs and memorabilia from people in the fishing industry and putting together a display at the Gulf and Fraser Fishermen's Credit Union. So we're really excited about that project.
Well, I'm always interested in acts of reconciliation, as this year has been proclaimed the year of reconciliation, right? Yeah. So I understand that you're also doing some work in and around reconciliation. Can you tell us about
sure. Just a little bit of background. A couple of years ago, I really became aware of just how many people were in the Downtown Eastside of Native background. And so I went to Renee Morisseau, who's on our board, and she's a Native artist and activist and educator in our community. And I said, we should do something, with and for the Native community of our community. And to make a long story short, we put together a show called Story Weaving, which we did at the Vancouver Aboriginal Friendship Center last year. Okay. And it was about the residential school system and its impact. And one of our partners at that time became the Indian Residential School Survivors Society. And so after we did that production, we said, we need to continue to work on reconciliation. It's not, you just don't do one event and then stop. You need to just keep working at it, right? And so we approached Angela White from the Indian Residential School Survivors Society about doing something at the festival again this year. Good. So we're doing that at the Carnegie. We're doing films. We're going to show one of Marie Clement's film about Stephen Litton, who attended the Residential School Survivors at Lytton Residential School. We've got a number of other films that we're showing, and it will be a panel. There's people involved in human rights that are coming in to talk. And the other key part of it is that we've invited Iskway singers to come in, Sandy Schofield and a couple of other.
Sarah Palmer.
Yeah, and so they're going to sing healing songs throughout the evening as part of the evening of the reconciliation. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it'll be a very powerful evening.
Well, where can we find out more about the other events that are happening at
You
this
can
festival?
find out more at Heart of the City Festival website. So it's very simple, heartofthecityfestival.com. And go there and all the details are posted up there on the website.
Okay, we've been speaking with Terry Hunter, the executive director of the Vancouver Moving Theatre and also the producer of the Heart of the City Festival. Plus, we've been shamelessly promoting our friends and our community on Access TV. Thank you for joining us.
Comments to Access TV at telus.net. We are not shocked.
On September 10th, I saw some people moving a totem pole. The pole was being moved to a shop where it was going to be completed. But I was curious. What was so important about this pole that so many people had volunteered to move it? I decided to talk to Bernie Williams, the carver, to find out.
My name is Skundal. I come from Haidagwai. I'm from the Raven clan, and I'm part Nuu-chah-nulth and St'át'imc, which is Coast Salish territory. I mean, I didn't initially end up wanting to come down to this neighborhood because I was apprenticing with Bill Reed then. Reed has just accepted Williams as his first woman apprentice, and that itself was a journey. That's what it was, a voyage of discovery. Harriet and Kitty Sparrow came into the Bill Reed studio in that day, and I thought they were taking me for lunch in that day. Like they started noticing that I started changing, forgetting about my own roots and that, forgetting about the people and that. But anyways, I ended up, coming back down here. This is where I ended up. You get used of living, like a certain lifestyle. We had a condo, we had, 2 carport, garage and that. They got really comfortable in there and all of a sudden, boom. This is, a community pole, and it's a survivor's pole, whether it's, domestic abuse, the murdered missing women, at the exploitation of children and women, human trafficking, residential school. We went to the Japanese apology today, and I thought, how profound that was to, that they be a part of this with us, and it was quite powerful. So this is the story of it, it's just about survival every day that we walk out our door. I mean, I'm very grateful to have a home, and that some months are pretty, pretty touchy and that, you never know. And, especially for the homeless people on these streets and that. So we wanted to give something back to the community to, to commemorate, but to never forget that these are people's lives that we are playing around with down here, and it's not okay. The basic needs, of the Human Rights Commission is housing and food, just all the basic needs, and it feels like that, these are the violations, that, is most out there, is, the survival for a decent home and that. So we want to put this up, as a reminder to these new businesses that it's not all about, it's not all about corporate or their monies and that, this is about the people's lives who really matter down here. And, these are people that, help to shape the community. But what changed about this? Ravens are, because I come from Imtiaz, I'm, a Raven, from the Raven clan and that. Ravens, are pretty mischievous and that, and I guess about transformation too and that, and all of a sudden now it changed. We're going to put the Raven with the, the beak coming out here. It changed and it ended up with the face. The beak ended up going underneath and to be part of the eagle wing. So that changed for us. So now we come down, to the wings here that is going to be moved in. This is where the talons will be. The talons will be right here. And then this is the beginning of the whale that will come through here. This is the side flukes. And the dorsal fin will come here and is worked into the bear mother will be the last part of it and that. But it's all about transformation and that. It sometimes when you just get going and it's just like, oh my God, that's not working. Then all of a sudden, I got an idea. And I'm kind of quirky in that, because I lay on this log and it helps me to get grounded because, you could have a really, really rough day and just not feeling well in that, and you just lay on it. I fall asleep on it sometimes. But it's got a lot of, it's really got a lot of spirit to it.
Comments to Access TV at telus.net. We are not shocked.
Hello, welcome to Access Community Television, shamelessly promoting our friends and community. My name is Wendy Pedersen, and I'm pleased to be a guest interviewer here today. We have with us in the studio Jean Swanson, who I'm very pleased to have here. She's here to talk to us about a very interesting project that she's been working on in the Downtown Eastside. Thank you for being here, Jean, and welcome to Access TV.
Thanks.
So, Jean, we hear that you are planning a walking tour in the neighborhood soon for a really interesting project called the Markers of Resistance. Could you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, it's a project done by the Gunargie Community Action Project with the city, and we've managed to get 12 historical markers put up on light poles in the neighborhood, and they're markers that commemorate persistence, resistance, and inclusion. And so one is about the Missing Women's Memorial March, one is about the first safe injection site in Canada, which was illegal, one is about the death of Olaf Solheim, one is about the redressing the head tax, one is about camping out for Crab Park, camping for 75 days, And there's 6 other ones that were chosen by the Vancouver and District Labour Council that are about labor struggles in the Downtown Eastside.
So why did you do this? Well, I know there was a lot of work that went into this project to get these markers on the poles in the Downtown Eastside. Why did you do it?
Well, you were part of that, doing the Carnegie Action Project's community vision for change, where we worked for 2 years and we interviewed or talked to in some way about 1,200 people about what they would like to see in the community. And one of the conclusions was that we need to change the image of the community so that low-income people are respected rather than despised. So that was one thing that came out of this visioning process. And another was we discovered some community assets in the Downtown Eastside. And
what's a community asset?
It's a good thing about the community that people like and that they relate to. And one of them was people fight for social justice in the Downtown Eastside. So here we have 12 markers that are part of changing the image of the Downtown Eastside and showing how people in that neighborhood are fighting for justice.
Can you show us a couple of them and explain how they are markers of social justice struggles that we've had in the Downtown Eastside?
One of them is the Missing Women's Memorial March, which is up on a pole at Main and Hastings. And everybody, we have the Missing Women's March every year to grieve and remember the missing and murdered women. But how many people know that in 1999, in order to get the police to offer a reward to find the missing women, people from the Downtown Eastside had to go and occupy a police board meeting. And what had happened was the police board had offered a reward of $100,000 to catch some robbers in the West Side, but for missing women and murdered women, there was nothing until people in the community went and occupied the police board to try and get the reward.
So who wrote this piece about that story, that important history in the Downtown Eastside?
This one was written by the Missing Women's Memorial Committee. It was a committee effort.
Okay.
And each one of the community ones was written by someone who is involved in this struggle.
Okay, do you want to show us one more?
Well,
another one?
This one is the Canada's first safe injection site, which was illegal at 327 Carroll.
Why is it illegal?
Well, people who wanted the legal safe injection site open were working and working and working, but it wasn't being opened and it wasn't being opened, and it was stalling and stalling. So in 2003, it was open 7 days a week from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. It's staffed by a volunteer nurse, and it put pressure on the city to actually get with it and open the real safe injection site. And then when Insight, the real legal one, got opened, then it closed down.
So who did the artwork and the layout for these? They're stunning.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
Murray Bush.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Yeah, Murray Bush did them.
So he's a resident in the Downtown Eastside
He
too,
is,
right?
yeah.
So can you tell me about this one? Now, this one has an interesting story.
Yes, this is about the death of Olaf Solheim. Olaf lived at the Patricia Hotel for about 60 years, and he was evicted along with people in about 15 other hotels during Expo in 1986, because the hotel owners wanted to rent the hotels to tourists so they could get a lot more money.
So let me guess where they put this one up.
Well, the thing is, when Olaf was evicted, he died.
Okay.
So the city put this up near the Patricia Hotel, but as far as we know we haven't seen it there. It's gone missing.
Wow. So what do you think happened?
Somebody obviously took it down.
And why? I mean, we can only speculate why somebody would take it down.
Yeah.
But it's a provocative sign.
It doesn't make the Patricia Hotel look good because it evicted people during Expo.
So Jean, along with Joey Hartman from the Vancouver District Labour Council, they will be doing a tour soon, a walking tour of these markers. They'll be going to all 12 sites, along with some of the people who were involved in those struggles, which should be really exciting. And that will be part of the 2013 Heart of the City Festival. The tour begins on Sunday, October 27th at 11 till 1, and they're meeting at the Oppenheimer Field House the Park House on Powell Street, and they're going to walk down to the Woodward's atrium. And I bet you there's one in here about Woodward's.
There is.
Oh. So its cost is $10 for non-residents, and it's free for local residents and for those who are forced to live in poverty. So, but Jean, before you go, I'm wondering if I could tell our audience a little bit about you, because people probably are wondering, who is this woman, Jean, who's doing this fantastic work? Well, I don't know if people realize, but Jean is one of the legendary fighters in the Downtown Eastside for social justice. She's also really humble. She's probably mad at me for saying this.
I am.
But she, back in the 1970s, she started the Downtown Eastside Residents Association with Bruce Erickson and Libby Davies. And you had some hallmark victories back then, hey? Like, just quickly about the SROs and the fires.
Bruce and Libby they started it before, they were there before I were, and they got sprinklers in the SROs.
Yeah.
In those days, 7 people a year were dying in fires.
7 a year is a lot.
And the landlord said, no, we can't put in sprinklers in, it'll be too expensive, we'll have to close. But they fought it, and they all put sprinklers in, and people aren't dying in fires.
So this is since the 1970s. Jean has gone on. Dira went on to win the Carnegie Center as a community center. And they had a 7-year historic battle for that community center in the Downtown Eastside. She went off to work for HEU and end legislative poverty. And then she retired and came back to the Downtown Eastside to work for free, work her butt off, right? With the Carnegie Community Action Project, which we totally appreciate. And just quickly, we only got a couple seconds left. Any big accomplishments there from the Carnegie in the last 7 years that we've been there?
Well, it was quite an accomplishment to get this community vision for change. I think we put on a lot of pressure during the Olympics to get the provincial government to fund the 14 sites of social housing, and probably because of some of our pressure, they bought the hotels.
In a nutshell, Jean, what keeps you going?
It needs to be done.
It needs to be done, she says, Mrs. Humble Pie. Okay, thank you.
And working with people like you.
Oh, thanks, Jean. So thank you for watching Access TV, shamelessly promoting our friends and community, and thanks a lot for being here, Jean.
You're welcome.
Comments to Access TV at telus.net. We are not shocked.
Hi, my name is Mark Freeman with Access TV. Today we're in the Downtown Eastside taking part in Jane's Walk. Jane's Walk is in honor of Jane Jacobs, who was a community activist out of Toronto, who was interested in how community environments impacted the people in them and walking through them. The specific walk we're taking part in is about participatory storytelling and how being in the Downtown Eastside and the buildings and places have impacted the people in it.
Here's our map. We've plotted out the points where everybody's going to be telling a story, and we're going to try and follow this route. And yeah, so let's head off and see where this takes us. And when we get to the first stop, we'll have our first person tell us their story.
In my former life in the early 80s, I was an interior designer. So I worked with a gentleman called Howard Meekin, who is Interland Corp, and he turned Le Magasin from an old warehouse into a facility. I'm not sure if it's open, but we can go in through and take a look. So this was a rockin' place in the 80s. It was a French restaurant, and we reset the tile on the floor with Le Magasin in the tile, so it was kind of the character of the 80s. And you talked about working all night. You know, I'd have to come in here and kind of draw stuff up because the drawings were never kind of quite right. And then there were some of the metal ceiling was original, and then we had to replace the rest of the metal ceiling so that it matched. And that's the story of Le Magasin.
So the idea is that all the water that's collected at each level through the drains, some of it gets piped into that earth-filled center area. And there used to be bamboo, but I don't think the bamboo is supposed to be really resilient. It was doing really well. It was halfway up within that space all around. But I don't know what's happened. I haven't been here for a while. So.
Yeah. I don't know if we should. I'll try to get up there.
We're old, Alex. We're old.
I actually got kicked out last time I was up there. But I used to work for this environmental NGO in this building. This was in like the summer of 2001. I come up here just to kind of escape the city and sit like up on top of that house up there. This roof up here was sort of like the center of my world at that time. And yeah, it still has this kind of, I guess, a bit of that resonance for me when I come up here.
I hope you've enjoyed this Jane's Walk through the Downtown East Side. For Access TV, this has been Mark Freeman. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Access Community Television, shamelessly promoting our friends and community. My name is Sid Tan, and I'm here with Grace Eiko Thomson, longtime social justice, human rights activist, and a former president of the National Association of Japanese Canadians. Welcome to the show, Grace.
Thank you very much for having me.
So nice to have you here. We've known each other for about 15 years, been through some struggles, and now we get to talk about something substantive.
Right.
Let's talk about the City of Vancouver apology and its announcement of the Year of Reconciliation. I understand that you've been involved quite a bit in many of the events.
Yes, I was particularly invited to speak to the motion of apology by the City of Vancouver on September 25. And I spoke of the historic content of the apology motion. The motion was, the apology was to the Japanese Canadians 71 years ago. We were interned in 1942 to the interior of BC and elsewhere, and the City of Vancouver did nothing to help us. In fact, they abandoned us, and we were sent away by the federal government.
And so the City of Vancouver has acknowledged that they abandoned the Japanese Canadians, and I stress, Japanese Canadians. These were Canadians, many of them born in Canada.
Exactly. My parents were naturalized Canadians, and I was born in Canada, but my family were sent away as enemy aliens.
How old were you when that happened, Grace?
I was 7 years old, and I had some experience in Vancouver with going to school at Strathcona and going to the Carnegie Library for books. And in fact, I lived on 510 Alexander Street, which is the heart of what used to be known as Japantown, and now today we call downtown part of Downtown Eastside.
So your family was actually a Vancouver family before the internment?
Yes, my father worked at a codfish cooperative, which was an early cooperative between Aboriginal European Canadians and Japanese Canadians. So it was a very interesting formation of a cooperative that I would like to know more about. But you know, it could have been a beginning of cooperation between these peoples. But unfortunately, we were living in an incredible climate of discrimination against Japanese Canadians, and I should say against Asian Canadians.
Yeah. How would you say that has brought you to where you are today? I'm sure that as a 7-year-old, that must have been quite an experience.
Well, you know, it's an interesting thing. When you live in Japantown, what's called Japantown in Vancouver, you're certainly living among people who are like your relatives. And of course, the reason why we were living there is because the Japanese Canadians, in order to support themselves, the support that was not there for us outside of this community was really a way of being able to survive. So for us, living in Japantown was a way of survival. And for me, as a 7-year-old, having to leave there, not knowing exactly what the reasons were, and going to another internment site where, as I say, another, because in a sense, it was a place where all Japanese Canadians were there. So it was like living with family again. So for a child, whether you sit on a wooden bench or on a nice sofa, is not the is not something that you worry about as long as your family is there. For me, in 1945, the federal government again told us that we could not go back to Vancouver, even though it was the end of the war, to as I say, give credence to the fact that the internment had nothing to do with anything but discrimination.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
actually, we're wanted to get in terms of the Japanese-Canadian experience, which brings it to us. That is about displacement, and what I found really interesting was the efforts that you and other activists brought up when the Japanese-Canadian apology, 2 Japanese Canadians came up with the city of Vancouver. You had another message, and I'm wondering if you could tell our viewers what that message was.
Yes, originally when I saw the apology that was written up by the city, there was nothing to do with anything but an apology to Japanese Canadians. And I fought for getting another pledge within this apology, which said that the city of Vancouver would apologize to the Japanese Canadians, but at the same time pledge that this kind of injustice will not happen to any other residents of Vancouver. For me, the apology would have had no teeth without that last clause in it. And fortunately, they did put it in for us. And so for me, considering what is going on with Downtown Eastside right now, which has to do with a very vulnerable population of people who have been excluded economically and socially, I believe that this pledge by the city is something that I hope is a real one, that's something that they will live up to.
So on this pledge, how was the pledge made? Do you think the city will be able to keep it? Exactly how did that come about? Well,
for me, for instance, the city of Vancouver did pledge in last June that this was the year of reconciliation. Now, reconciliation is the word that is being used with the Aboriginal community at this time, and the Truth and Reconciliation. So it's interesting that the City of Vancouver chose a week after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission meetings to give the apology to Japanese Canadians. So for me, that's an interesting thing, and I hope that the reason for this is that they are taking these things very seriously. At the same time, I hope that is the way it's to go. I believe that our communities have to be vigilant, and as recipients of this pledge and the apology, I feel that we need to make sure that the city is living up to this. I might mention follow it through. But I might mention also that after the apology was made in City Council, we had a reception at the Vancouver Language School Hall. And at that time, one of our speakers, Randy Enomoto, asked Councillor Kerry Jang, who was present at the reception, could you promise that there will not be one person displaced in Downtown Eastside? And Kerry Jang responded very affirmatively and said he was going back to City Hall that evening where this was a matter of discussion. And I would say that he promised that there would not be a person displaced. So can we hope to believe this?
Yeah, we're coming to the end of our time, Grace, but that's a good way to end. Councillor Kerry Jang promising or saying that not one person will be displaced. Thank you for being with us today, Grace.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I
so
really
good to
appreciate
talk to
this.
You're watching Access Community Television, shamelessly promoting our friends and community, and our friend today was Grace Thomson of the Japanese Canadian community. So great to have her. My name is Sid Tan. Until next time we meet again, tight edits and straight shooting.
Comments to Access TV at telus.net. We are not shocked.
Well, that's our show for the day. We're Access Community Television, shamelessly promoting our friends and community, and I was so pleased to have with us our host today, Gunargie O'Sullivan. Thanks for being here and all the work that you do in the community. It's great to have you here. Great interview with Terry.
Oh, it was my pleasure to finally get a chance to speak with him after all this time.
Yeah. Anyhow, this is it. We're at the end of our show. Bye for now, folks, and we will leave you with some footage from the Downtown Eastside Women's Housing March. Thank you for being with us. Again, bye for now.
Coast Salish Territory, Saltwater City, Vancouver, British Columbia, September 28, 2013. The 7th Annual March for Women's Housing and Against Poverty with the Downtown Eastside Women's Center Power of Women Group. The air is festive feisty.
Louder, I can't hear you. Joyce! Krista! Shirley!
Wet, wet, wet. Hearts are strong and spirits are high.
And then we come outside and we see so many people that are homeless. It breaks my heart to see this. It breaks my heart to hear women who have children who cannot even get a parent. So therefore, every year I'm going to stand here and I'm going to fight for housing because I was homeless once only 6 years ago. All my relations. Here's my granddaughter.
Hi, I'm Serenity. I'm fighting for homelessness in the Downtown Eastside. Please give all the moms and babies homes. And my relations. Thanks. Thank you.
The march begins south on Columbia and left, of course, onto Hastings. This march for housing, health, and child care is a call for no more evictions, no more displacement, and no more gentrification in the Downtown East Side. Women in the Downtown East Side continue to bear the brunt of poverty, displacement, violence, and apprehension.
When do we want it? Now!
Rain? What rain? The Hearty gather at the corner of Hastings and Main.
I'd like to acknowledge that we're on unceded Coast Salish territory. And today I'd like to say how the minimum wage perpetuates poverty. It takes 2 adults working at $30 per hour and up to own a home in this city, Vancouver. I don't know how many of you work for this amount, but I don't. Now, if you have disabilities at all, you're more than likely living in the Downtown East Side of Vancouver, which was and always has been the cheapest area of Vancouver to live in. 100% social housing. Thank you.
Can we have Mabel?
The march continued as the Merry Band headed north on Main to Gastown and Gassy Jack Square.
Thank you, CPAC, for coming. And my walk.
The Downtown East Side Power of Women group are women from all walks of life. Many are single mothers. Some have had children apprehended due to poverty, chronic physical and mental health issues, drug and alcohol addiction, survivors of sexual violence and mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional abuse, survivors of colonization and racism. They exercise power through sharing experiences and raising awareness in the community, social assistance, working poor, homelessness, and living in extreme poverty. These are struggles the peaceful and festive Solidarity March supports. That support includes dancing in the streets of Gastown.
I'll ask you a question. Do you want to stop gentrification and displacement of our community?
Get in there, Wendy.
I'm supposed to be working.
Wet, wet, wet. Smiles were abundant. The music and dancing, the lightness of feet and hearts are reminders of what carries social justice activists and organizers through storms and the troubles of our community. Together, it all can be weathered. We must look after each other and ourselves. Sing and dance. Have a good life. Be good to each other and animals. It drives the soul suckers crazy. From Gastown, the march headed south to the 100-block Hastings, to the site of the former Pantages Theater, a contentious market condominium development that for decades some community groups have proposed for social housing.
Ladies and gentlemen, what do we want? Housing! What do we want? What do we want? Housing! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Housing! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Housing! When do we want it? Now! Healthcare for all, right?
Right.
Isn't that what we're here for?
A good day, a day of group building and celebration. Chalk drawings on the Pantages perimeter fence mark that the struggle continues for homes for low-income people. Homes, not jails. Homes, not pipelines. A call for rent control and community control. A call for housing, health, and child care for all. Reporting for Access Community Television, Sid Tan on Coast Salish Territory, Saltwater City, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Tight edits and straight shooting.